Bring up our thing. All right, I think this is where we were at. So again, we were talking about Freud's psychosexual theory, and again, I'm trying to show some social influences that Freud had and cultural influences Freud had, but also some of the things that he developed as far as had influences on more modern research. Okay. So the next phase, so we went through the oral phase, which he believed explained overconsumption, and we brought up smoking and obesity was his kind of this was his explanation for that based on that. What is the next developmental phase that we need to learn to have some type of control over? When I think about accomplishments in life, we now have graduation from kindergarten and graduation from high school, getting married, sometimes getting divorced. Graduating from high school and college are all things that we tend to celebrate as um, milestones in our growth and development. And I always thought that the first award we should get in life is for potty training. I think there should be a party. There should be a potty training party for when children successfully get through this stage. Because I want you to think about what potty training, which usually occurs between about the age of 2 or 4, really represents. Okay. The first thing that potty training really represents is that we are going to give in to the demands of what we see as an authority figure that is telling us that we need to um, uh, uh, pee and defecate in a controlled way. So there's the first kind of thing that we learn is that there's a social system that puts pressure on us via authority figures or parental figures that we have to navigate and understand. The second thing, if you really think about potty training, is this is when we're going to take our first control over natural biological processes. So before potty training, we would urinate and defecate whenever the urge came up. It would happen there and then, and hopefully someone would come and clean it up at some point. Okay. But what potty training requires is getting those urges and saying, no, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to wait until I'm in this time and in this place to take care of those bodily functions. So not only are we giving into demands of the social world, we're actually taking control of our biological functions. And if you think about that, we don't think about that as adults, right? Because it's something I hope we all do and maintain. But if you think about this, this is our first experience in life where we're giving into those demands. Okay. So what did Freud believed that people who were successful versus unsuccessful got through this stage? Well, he believed that people who learned to control their biological processes and really conform to demands became good citizens. They're able to control themselves in emotional or chaotic situations. They're able to understand the needs of others and how they need to respond to them. And so they develop that. People who become what are known as anally fixated, though, according to Freud, because they don't learn to take control of their internal biological system, they take excessive control of their external world. So this is the person who, you go to their closet and all their clothes are color coded and the shoes are in the perfect places. This is a person who, um, when you have a group project, they need to have things. We're going to do the introduction, we're going to do the middle of the paper, and we're going to do the end of the paper, and it has to fit this thing. And if something's out of place, they have that need to kind of fix it. If you think about it, this is someone who is OCD or obsessive compulsive, and they can't handle it when their external world is kind of out of cahoots, as you would say. And this is where, in popular culture, we get the term that person is anal, or that person has a stick up there. You can fill in the rest. Is the term that person is anal, we're usually referring to someone who is uptight, who is rigid, who can't handle change or anything like that. And that's where the term that person is anal comes from. It comes from our dear friend Sigmund Freud. Okay. So this becomes an important role. Now, beyond this anal phase, we should recognize the development of language and emotions, which we will talk about a little bit later in the course, and the connection between what and the connection to what is known as theory of mind, which we will also talk about at the end of our discussion on Wednesday. Theory of mind is this ability to understand that I have emotions and I can properly label those emotions and understand that someone else has their own emotions that are unique to them. And so the term of theory of mind is let's say you're happy and the person sitting next to you is crying. You theorize what's going on in them. Why are they crying? If we look at this, this develops between about 24 to 36 months of age, where before about 24 to 36 months, a baby may be happy and mommy is sad, and the baby will go up to mommy and say, "We're happy, we're happy, we're happy." You're not supposed to be crying, mommy. Okay. After about 20 or 40, 36 months of development, the baby goes up to mommy and goes, "Why are you crying, mom?" They're trying to develop a theory of why mom, in her own experience, is experiencing something different from me, because she has her own mind and I have my own mind. So I need to figure out, theorize what's going on in her mind. I will tell you when we get to this sections, humans, primates, elephants, dolphins, tend to develop theory of mind. There's not much evidence in many of the other animals in the animal kingdom for this, so it seems to be something that's unique to species who have that frontal cortex uh, developed and really pay attention to and theorize about the emotions and feelings of the persons standing or sitting next to them. It seems to be a unique quality to the kind of frontal cortex species of the world. So that's something that I think Freud was trying to get to more than this idea of satisfaction of anal needs. But we can't, again, in my opinion, we can't diminish the first time that we took control of biological needs and gave in to the social demands of our social world. I think we should prize that a little bit more. Reese, to your question, Reese asked, would this suggest that struggling during potty training leads to struggles for autonomy? I will tell you, Reese, the research on potty training, individuals who have a difficult time with potty training tend to have physiological issues, nothing really to deal with their psychological issues. But we can talk about when we get to the abnormal section, if you've ever heard of what's called the triad of psychopathology, bedwetting is part of that. And so there are some psychological consequences that lead to bedwetting in older ages, but most of it's due to bedwetting. The autonomy component, um, um, uh, if we look at it from other perspectives, autonomy develops during this age group. I don't know if any of the research has tied it directly to potty training, but you're absolutely right. We're going to look at a theory on Wednesday that shows that autonomy in childhood develops between this age of 2 to 4. So, but I haven't seen any research that directly links potty training to autonomy. But as we will see, there is research that suggests that children develop autonomy during this age group. So, very good question. It's one I haven't really thought about, but I'm not aware of research that has connected those two. Good research question though. Okay. So now let's talk about the next phase. All right. And this is where the weirdness of Freud's theory really kind of took off, and the one that he's most criticized for. And this is what's known as the phallic phase. Okay. He chose 4 to 6 as this happening. I will tell you, we have evidence since we've started doing a lot of ultrasounds that infants and children and whatnot do this in mom's womb. And that is they have a tendency to touch areas of their body that have a high concentration of nerve cells that when you touch it, it feels really good. Okay. This is typically kind of the age group. You can definitely occur much younger than this, but Freud put it between the age of 4 to 6, where a parent will walk into a child in the bathtub and they will be quote unquote masturbating. And again, put the headphones on if you have children in the room. This might not be a conversation you want them to hear. Um, but this is where a lot of parents walk in and they'll see their boy or girl masturbating. Okay. Now, I want to give some science-based, evidence-based advice to parents and future parents or caretakers out there. The very common response of parents and caregivers is to freak out, mostly because they tend to be uncomfortable with their own sexuality, but they tend to freak out. Why is little Billy sitting there masturbating in the bathtub? And what I would encourage you to do, based again on literature and research, is don't freak out. Don't shame. Don't um, 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 viscerally react. Instead, you can do yourself a huge favor, okay? Because reacting to the child calmly, they'll most likely give you the truth, okay? And so, walking in on little Billy and you see him touching his private parts, and you go, instead of saying, Billy, knock that off, those kinds of things, or hesitatingly slamming the door so they'll stop, simply go in and say, Hey, Billy, what are you doing? Why are you touching yourself there? Okay, here's an important point. There's a difference between childhood masturbation and adult masturbation. Childhood masturbation occurs when a child finds an area of their body that it feels really good to touch. Adult masturbation is when we fantasize about individuals who we are sexually attracted to and we engage in the act of masturbation. So here's a good thing to think about. If the child says, mommy, daddy, caregiver, it feels good. It feels good to touch there. That's natural. And then you can then have the calm kind of moral stance your family has on touching cells there, having other people touch them there. You can have the good touch, bad touch talk, all of those kinds of things. You're cleared to go. But if little Billy says, well, Uncle Joe showed me how to, or Aunt whoever does it to me, well, then you have a different course of action that you need to take, right? Then you need to start considering that there has been some type of trauma that has occurred to your child. But if you respond the way many parents and caregivers respond to, which is usually freaking out and all those kinds of things, the child is going to bury that truth inside them because they're ashamed of it. They feel like they're going to be in trouble if they tell you the truth. So there's some evidence-based advice um, for how to have that conversation if this happens. Okay. So, but let's talk about this age group as an important age group. Okay. Because actually it starts around the age of 3 and usually goes up to about the age of 8. Is that children engage in a certain kind of play. They engage in what's called role-playing play, meaning that they watch Superman on TV and then you find them on the couch with a towel wrapped around their neck and they're jumping off the couch. They watch firefighters and so they're going around the house with a red hat on with a siren sound. They see doctors and they're playing doctors and patients. They look at mom and dad and they say, hey, let's go play house. You be mom, I'll be dad. They're engaging in role play. And this is very important, we found in children's development, because what they're learning is what behaviors work for them and what behaviors don't. So they find out that, for example, in the Superman example, they can't fly. But you know what? They can stand up to other people. They can recognize when something's wrong and intervene. Um, they can, they might not like the firefighting thing. It seems too much for them in play, but hey, they really like the doctor thing or the other thing that they've seen and they've observed in their world. Indeed, we have found between the age of especially 3 to 6, the more a child engages in play, the better they are socially, academically, in relationships when they're adults, um, and in the work environment. In fact, most of our identity, while it will be solidified in adolescence, is usually developed by the age of 5. And the more children engage in play, we find the more they are they're able to explore that and understand it. In fact, the number one predictor of whether a child will go to college or not is their attitude towards school at the age of 5. Now, I know there's a lot of us. I had a negative uh, view at that age, and so life events can change that. But when we talk about this in general, without any life events that motivate you to get your education despite your experiences, people naturally going out of high school into college tend to have a more positive view of school at the age of 5. Okay. So there's that. But what Freud recognized, and what we have recognized in quite a bit of research, is that um, what you should be learning during this age group is how to have good, healthy relationships. So now we're going to go back to the Freudian interpretation of this. So he developed what's known as the Oedipus complex for boys, penis envy, which Carl Jung is going to fully develop as the Electra complex in girls. Now, let me explain this. If you know the Greek story of Oedipus, it is a young man who was foretold his future to his family and everyone else that he was going to become an adult, kill his father, and have sexual relationships with his mother. Now, if there's anybody in the world that probably did not have the Oedipus complex, it was Oedipus, because I'll take you through the real story of Oedipus. His parents knew of this foretelling. So they sent Oedipus when he was born to another family in another town in a place, and he was raised with different parents, not his biological parents. And one day he found out about this fortune, this thing that he was going to do. He was so scared of it, not knowingly, he moved back to the town where his biological parents were. And indeed, not knowing that it was actually his biological mother, he killed his father and had relationships with his mother. Okay. This was supposed to be more of a story of legend and mythology to tell why men tend to marry women like their mothers and mothers marry men like their fathers. But yeah, they took a very Greek mythology attempt at this. But what did Freud interpret this phase as? Well, Freud interpreted it as wanting to possess love and possess the thing that creates love. And who is that for a child? That is mom. And mom is the epitome of what the child wants to possess and have a relationship with. But there's this dude that is between him and mom called dad. So, in order to take over dad and to then have mom, the child then takes on the behaviors and the mannerisms and things of the father in order to have relationships with his mother. The Electra complex is a little bit different in girls because mother is still the object of love. But in the Electra complex, the little girl recognizes that dad has something she doesn't, which makes him a great person. He gets the affection of mom, he gets the affection of her, and he has all of this stuff. And so, what does the girl start to develop? She develops the famous term of penis envy. Well, who has access to dad's penis? Well, mom does. So, what does a girl do? She starts to take on the mannerisms of the mother, the behaviors of the mother, the emotions of the mother, in order to gain access to, you got it, dad's junk. So, and yes, it is that plain in Freudian terms, and you probably have heard all of the jokes about it, and it is quite hilarious and disturbing that it was put in those terms. But let's take sex out of it. Remember what I said. Children during this age group engage in role play. They're trying to learn the roles that fit in their world. And so what do? You role play being dad. And believe it or not, girls will role play as dad. Boys will role play as mom, whether it be in their mind or behaviorally. Yes, children will role play both roles. And so they take on and they learn how to relate with quote unquote the opposite sex. Okay. Now, what does modern research have to say about this idea that this period is about learning how to engage the opposite sex? Well, we've had plenty of decades of single parenting, and again, just like what I said with averages, there is no parent in the world that deserves respect as much as single parents do. They take on the role of both parents. The majority of them do amazing jobs. And so I'm not here to say that being a single parent will result in this outcome. Okay. So please don't take this, what I'm about to say, as a mistaken term. But we have had enough children who were raised with a mom and a son where the mom had such bad experiences with men that she didn't allow her son to have male role models. So she didn't allow her son to get to know her boyfriends or get to know uncles or grandparent fathers. And they didn't have that maleness in their life. They were protected by their mothers. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't believe this, but it does happen. And there might be a father in this room that it does occur to, that there are fathers who raise children as single fathers. And just like single mothers, there are certain fathers who had such bad experiences with women that they guard their daughters from having adult role models in the girl's life. So they don't introduce them to girlfriends. They might limit their access to aunts or to um, grandmothers, those kinds of things, and protect them against the quote unquote evil female race. Okay. And what we have found again, and this has nothing to do with sexuality. We found this among gay men, lesbian women. The research on transgender is not there, so I can't speak to that. But we do know that this has really nothing to do with a person's sexuality. But when a child, especially during this age group, is not exposed to same-sex and opposite-sex role models, they tend to have difficulties in developing good relationship skills in adulthood and tend to have difficulties in relationships, tend to not, they're the individuals that tend to not be able to talk to that girl or not be able to engage that boy or, and I shouldn't say girl, boy, woman or man. And so is there something to be said about this role model period that as parents we should be aware of? And this is why, again, parenting advice from research and evidence suggests this is why it is actually healthy for a parent to have conflict in front of their children. But this is the but, and sometimes hard for adults to do. Not only is it healthy for children to see that conflict, they need to see how those adults resolve that conflict so that they learn how to resolve that conflict. So it's kind of double-edged sword. It's not that you just want to expose your child to conflict, you also have to expose them to how that conflict becomes resolved and you come back together as a couple. So that again, a little bit of parenting in there, but it is very evidence-based, and there's research that really does support that notion of role modeling during this age group specifically. Okay, so the next group, which he argued between 6 to about the age of puberty, I think is the biggest blunder, I think, for Sigmund Freud and how it influenced research. This, if you want to think about, is our elementary years, where we go through elementary school and whatnot. And if you're interested specifically in child psychology, this is an age group that is very, very under-researched because what Freud labeled this is as the latent period. That really there's nothing significant psychologically that happens during this age group, except we learn how to write and we learn skills of living and how to maybe cook or bake or play a guitar or something like that. But nothing psychologically really occurs during this age group. And following research has really suffered from that. Mo if you take a human development class, you will notice that most of the research we know about children during this age group tends to come from schools. And what research has been done in elementary schools, very little research has been done in the child's home environment or their social environment or any other real environment outside of the home. So again, if you're interested in this topic and you're interested in children, this is definitely an age group that is under researched and uh, is understood. So just a kind of a note on that. So what happens during, of course, puberty? We develop our adult body. We are now at the ability to reproduce. What do you need to do to reproduce? You have to have the desire to reproduce. So the erogenous zone, as you would say, is the object of your sexual attraction. And so this is where we learn to control our urge to engage in sexual activity with other people. And again, the genital phase, according to Freud, if you don't control your need, this is things that explain the rapist, the impulsive person, the individual who can't control themselves because they don't learn how to appropriately engage outside objects of their desire. They tend to engage in high risk behaviors that can lead to harm or hurt of others or themselves. And then, of course, 18 is where he cut it off, as stated earlier, as the end of our development. Okay. So I am going to just stop here. And what I'm going to ask, because I don't want to stop the recording, I'm going to stop sharing. Unless you're comfortable unmuting yourself while we're recording, and I won't say your name if you put a question in the chat because we're recording. Does anybody have any questions about the Freudian theory or the findings we have found that are beyond him, his interpretation of it that we mentioned, as far as more current research on the topics that I think he was trying to get at? Please put your question. If you don't have a question, just put no, and we'll move on for just a few more minutes. Okay, not the news. Okay, so I assume you got it. All right. Okay, so I just want to just give a preview of where we're headed, just so that you kind of know. So this is again the first theory that we talked about, and I do want to note that, and it's not a topic that we'll get to, is there were a lot of individuals known as neo-Freudians. I mentioned Carl Jung, Alfred Adler. We're going to do another theorist on Wednesday of Erik Erikson that de-emphasize Freud's notion of the biological drives being sexual. That they really started to take on, for example, a large portion of the feminist movement started with Maya Roll and his daughter, Sigmund Freud's daughter. I can't remember her name, but they really started what's called or liberation psychology, saying that our primary drives are not towards sex, but towards um, um, competition, those kinds of things. Alfred Adler said we're born inferior, so our primary unconscious drives are to overcome that inferiority. Um, Anna, yes, thank you. I don't know how I could forget a name Anna, but um, so just so you know, the more modern psychoanalysts really de-emphasize Freud's idea, but I wanted to present this theory because it's a first and has had a lot of influence on research and popular culture and the like. So where we're going to go on Wednesday, we're going to talk about two theories on Wednesday. The first one is going to be a cognitive developmental theory. So, how do we construct our internal world? And how do we develop our understanding to make decisions and to understand the difference between right and wrong, moral development, all of those things? It will be under the guise of Piaget, and will extend that to other areas such as moral reasoning and those kinds of things. And then we're going to, I'll just show you real quick. I'll just go through this. This is his theory. We'll go over. And then we'll end with Erik Erikson's theory, which is, again, a lifespan theory. And he really focuses on how an infant develops in their social world and how they construct it emotionally and psychologically to gain things like trust. And I believe autonomy was brought up earlier, initiative and identity, things like intimacy and meaning in life. And again, this one's going to be one of the very first lifespan theories, which makes it worth going over. And then we may extend into Monday a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit about emotions and feelings um, and the like. And then we will move on. We'll get through this through Monday, and then we'll end in our next topic, which I think is learning and memory. But that's kind of what we have to go through. So I'm going to stop my sharing now.